Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. This is the second part of my coloring tutorial. The first part can be found in the playlist and the description box. So let's get into shading. I will start with the hair. When it comes to shading, you have two options. You can do everything on the same layer as the base color, but I like to create a new layer. That way it keeps everything separate and it's easier in case I make a mistake. To choose your shading color, you can manually pick a darker shade. Or you can change the blending mode, and this is what I like to do. Here in the where it says normal, it's actually the blending mode, so you click on it and choose multiply. This will make any color that you choose way darker than it is. So if I pick, for example, the base color for the hair, now as you can see, it is way darker than the hair. It makes it easier to shade. And also, don't forget to clip your shading layer to the base color so that you don't go outside. Also, don't forget to name your layers. So since I'm in the hair folder, I can just name it shading since I'll know it's only for the hair. I'm using for the hair this brush here it's called the hair brush. I will link all the brushes that I got from assets that I used in this video. I will link them in the description box so that you can download them. They are all free, but it's only for Clip Studio users. The set comes with 3 different types of brushes with different sizes. This one has strands, and this one has thicker strands. So using the base color, in my opinion, is way too dark for shading this. So since I'm on the multiply layer, I can pick something way lighter, like the color I have right here. See, it's darker but not too dark, so it looks good. But before we start shading, you have to decide where your light source is. This determines where you're going to apply your shadows. So for this drawing, let's say that our light source comes from the top right corner. Let's say sun is here, so the light comes this. Usually I don't know exactly how to place every shadow, so I either go a bit randomly based on the light source, or I look at the reference I used for my drawing. If you didn't use a reference, you can pick one just for the shading. In Clip Studio, you have here on the right, this window here, it's called Navigator. This is a smaller version of your canvas, but if you go here, there is something called Subview. This is where you can put your reference picture, and as you can see, you can slide to make it bigger or smaller, and zoom in, zoom out.
Zoom in, zoom out, okay.
You can rotate and flip it. You can also have multiple pictures. So it's very useful. So So this is the reference I used, but on this picture you can see that the light source also seems to come from this side because the highlight is longer here and at the top of the head. But as you can see, the shadows are not very noticeable here. You can see the highlights very well, but the shadows. So I went and picked another picture. It's not the same pose, but it has the same light source. This one is way more detailed when it comes to shading, highlights. So we're going to start by shading the big parts of the hair first, and then you can add the small details. So I'm gonna start by choosing a large brush size. Since I have a lot of areas to cover, a large brush size will make it easier. So I'm going to shade the bangs here, but also on the side of the head and the inside of the ponytail, because it's right behind the head and the neck. You can see it on the reference picture that this area is darker, but also the inside of the curls. So since the head is circular, I'm going to shade following a certain curve. Like you can see it on both pictures that the shadow is not a straight line, it's curved. You can see that the highlight here too, it is curved as it follows the shape of the head.
If you like my video so far, please subscribe and click on the bell button to be notified of my future uploads.
For the hair strands around her face, as you can see on this picture, it's very light. There are barely any shadows except where here there's a twist here, and at the top because it's slightly covered by bangs. So I'm going to leave to keep here slightly dark, the top, and this area here where it's twisted, and the top that's slightly covered by hair. It's okay if the shape of your shadows is slightly different than your reference, as long as it respects where your light source is. I also like to add a shadow at the top of the head. So I'm going to add a small circle here. It doesn't need to be too big, like that is enough. Now the next step is to blend the shadow lines. As you can see, it's quite harsh. And you have two options. If you look at the reference picture here, you can see that the artist used triangles to blend the shadow with the hair color. And sometimes she added color and sometimes she erased it. So what you can easily do is use the transparent color to erase. For example, if you add a triangle here, if you choose the transparent color, the shortcut is C, and X is the shortcut for the subcolor. So if you choose the transparent color, you can also erase your color. But I don't like really this effect because it leaves a straight line in some areas, so it's still a bit harsh. It's not really that much my style, So I use instead this blender called fingertip, and it kind of smudges the color. So I just go all around the line with up and down movements. You can just pass twice in the same area and it will remove or add more color. So I'll just keep smudging all the shadow in the hair, also the shadow on the ponytail, and the circle here a little bit. So now I'm going to add highlights to the hair. For this, I'm going to set the blending mode to screen. What it does is it's the opposite of multiply, so any color that you apply is going to be lighter. So as you can see here, the highlights are smaller than the shadows, so you don't need to cover a lot of space. So I'm going to add a circle like I did for the shadows. And I'm going to use the same blender to blend the highlights with the hair color. I'm also going to add some highlights in the ponytail and on the side here. So the highlights have to follow from where the light source is coming. You add highlights where the light is going to hit it directly. Like, for example, here and this area too. Don't forget to zoom out to look at the big picture, and you can see if you want to add more highlights or if you're satisfied with what you have. And now I'm going to add a slightly darker shade to the shadows to add more depth. So I'm going to darken the areas near folds and near the edges of the shadow to add more dimension.
I didn't like how the highlights and some shadows turned out, so I did them over again. I followed the same steps that I showed you, I just changed the brush size and how much I used the blender. So for now that's it for the hair, and I'm going to move on to the skin. I'm going to create a new layer, clip it to the layer below, and set its blending mode to multiply. just like I did for the previous step. To shade the skin, since the light source is at the top here, we're going to shade around the bangs because they're going to cast a shadow on the forehead. You can see it here on the reference picture. It's not very clear on the bangs, but the hair strand here that's close to the face, you see that there's a shadow here. So we're going to shade the bangs and the hair strand here close to the face. I'm also going to shade a bit on the nose to give it more dimension and under the lips. You can see that on the reference picture here, and also the eyelid here to give it more dimension, and the ear we're going to shade the folds to make them darker. Since the base color for the skin was light, we're going to use the same color for the shadow since the layers on multiply. To shape the skin, I use a basic brush like the G pen or the mapping pen. They come with Clip Studio Paint automatically. So it's not very clear on this reference picture, but if we look at the second one, you can see that the shadows on the face follow the shape of the bangs. So I'm going to do the same thing here for the hair. Of course, since at the top the hair is wider, the shadow should be wider than the tip of the hair. So that's why I start from the bottom first and go up. Now for the lips, as you can see, the color is very similar to the shadows, so it won't fit. I won't be able to shade with the same color. So what I'm going to do is, for the lips only, we can either change the color to something more distinctive, but I really like this peach color. So what I'm going to do is go back on the lips layer and use a slightly darker shade. You can see the difference on the color wheel, but I'm going to list all the colors that I used in the description below. And I'm going to add, it's too big. I'm going to add a shadow here, shadow line here. And then I'm going to use the blender, and I'm going to blur the outside of the line. You can see that it gives a bit of a shadow. If it's too much for you, you can blend more or simply erase the line. Usually glasses would cast a shadow on the face, the frame of the glasses, but since I'm going for an anime style, I will not add shadows, just highlights on the glass itself. Maybe add a little bit of shadow around these circles on the nose. But for now, I'm going to darken a bit the shadows on the skin. So for the ear, I'm going to darken the area here. As you can see on the picture, it's way darker because it's a hole, and around the folds maybe, and at the top of the shadow here, close to the hair, it's darker than at the bottom. It's going to add more depth to the shadows. So what I used for darkening the shadows is the blender here, in the blend mode from the blender. It's usually in every drawing program. I used quite a few, like Medibang and Sketchbook Pro, and they all had the blend. The other ones, not so much, but blend and blur were usually always there. Now it's time to color the eyes. They already have the base color, so I'm gonna add a new layer under the color layer for the whites. It'll be easier to color it without having to watch out for the brown here. I'm just gonna call it eye white. I'm just gonna call it white. And I'm going to use this color that's almost white but not completely. It's best to not use pure white in your drawings, only maybe for highlights. That's what a lot of artists said on internet, so I'm following their advice. So for the eyes, I decided to go with something very simple. I'm just going to add a lighter color at the bottom and a shadow at the top. So I'm going to lock the transparency on the color layer, and with the airbrush, I'm going to add a softer color here. Since I'm using an airbrush, it looks like a gradient, so it blends by itself. And then I'm going to add another layer at the top, and I'll call it just shadow, and I'll set the blending mode to multiply. Then I will use this very light blue color, and I'll go back to using the G pen. And I will cover the top of the eyes, and it will give a bit of a shadow. So now I'm going to add highlights to the face. So for the eyes, nose, and lips, I'm going to start with the eyes since I'm already on that layer. I'm going to add a new layer, and the blending mode will stay normal. If you want a highlight that shines, you can change it to add, or maybe add or add glow. But I just want basic normal highlights, so I'm gonna leave it to normal. And I'm gonna change the name to highlight. So for the highlights on the eyes, I'm gonna use light. Now I'm going to add a little bit of highlight on the nose. So on the skin layer, I'm making a new layer that I'm going to clip. Name it highlight again. Next is the lips. So same thing again, to create a new layer, clip it, and name it highlight. If you think that the highlight is too bright or you don't really like the color, you can change it with the option here in edit and convert to drawing color. So you can choose the color that you want, and then if I convert to drawing color, see, it changes the color. I will now add some blush on the face, since I did not add a lot of shadows, so it will give the face a bit more dimension. You can do it on the layer with the base color, but I prefer adding a new layer for that. I will also clip it and I'll name it blush. For the blush, I will use the airbrush. I use a large size so that I don't have to go over it too often, because with a large brush you can cover a lot and leave the color soft, but if it's a smaller brush, you'll have to go over it a lot. So if you go twice on the same area, you can see the lines too much. So with a large brush, I'll just go around in circles around the cheeks. It adds a bit of color to the face. You can also use a more pink color to add on top. You can also add a bit of the blush color around the eyes if you want to. So now I will add highlights on the glasses. I will place the highlights on the same side as the highlights on the eyes, so it will be on the left side of the frame. Once again, I will choose the G pen, and I will create a new layer in my glasses folder, and I will name highlight. Since the black frame is actually just a part of the line art, this color layer here is for the nose pads, so I can't clip the highlight layer. So that's it for this video. In the next part, I will continue applying shadows and highlights to the clothes. Thank you for watching and see you next time!